Hi, I'm the math guy, Steve. Let's try some trigonometry. So, when answering trigonometry questions, for the most part, you can just follow these 3 simple steps. And that is, you draw your triangle, more specifically, draw it in the correct quadrant. Then we find the sides of the triangle by doing a little bit of trigonometry, knowing a little bit about that, as well as the Pythagorean theorem. Don't forget that part. And then lastly, we go back and answer some questions. So let's try this one. We need to simplify this expression. And so how we simplify it is by first noting, well, where is my triangle? How we find that is by, let's start from the inside, work our way out. So first, they bring up this sine inverse part. So we're going to say, well, we know sine inverses are some angle. So we'll call that angle, I don't know, theta. So here we're saying set the inside equal to some angle, call it theta. We don't need to know what the angle is. We just know it's some angle. So the sine inverse of -12/13 is some angle theta, meaning the sine of theta, that angle theta, is equal to -12/13. And so how we find out where this triangle is by noting, well, the sine inverse, recall those are only in 2 quadrants. That's quadrants 1 and 4. It's -pi/2 to pi/2 are those angles. So we say, well, it's either in quadrant 1 or 4. How do we know which quadrant it's in? Well, all students take calculus, including you. And so, okay, out of 1 and 4, all of them are positive here. So we know the sign is negative here. And so we know there's our triangle. Now, when you're drawing these triangles, always make sure it's one of these triangles in this bow tie. Okay, so it'll be either in quadrant 1, it'll look like this. And again, these are all right triangles. In quadrant 2, it'll look like this. In quadrant 3 here, in quadrant 4 here. And the thetas that we're referencing every time are these thetas closest to the origin. So think of those thetas as the buttons on that bow tie, okay? And so we know we're in this quadrant, got it. We drew our triangle. Next step is to find the sides of that triangle. So how we find the sides is by noting, well, the sine of theta, remember SOHCAHTOA? The sine of theta is the opposite over the hypotenuse, or when we're on the XY coordinate plane, the Cartesian plane. Then we know that the sine of theta is not just the opposites over the hypotenuse, but we can even say the sine of theta is the Y over the R, the radian. Okay. So there's our opposite, there's our hypotenuse, there's our Y, there's our R. It's -12 and 13. So we use a little bit of trigonometry to find the sides of that triangle. So we need to find that's 2 sides though. We need to find the third side. How we find the third side? You know, Pythagoras, he got his little theorem. Yeah. His theorem was a squared plus b squared is c squared. But we'll use, that's equivalent to saying, okay, x squared plus y squared is that r squared, the radius squared. And so here we need to find the x coordinate, the x part. So we know, okay, that's x squared plus, here the y is -12 squared equals the r squared, so 13 squared. Now we solve this for x, so find the x coordinate. So x squared plus, let's see, -12 squared is 144, okay. 13 squared is 169, all right. Solving for x, we'd say subtract 144, so x squared equals 25, all right. And then you square root both sides. Now don't forget that plus or minus. So x would equal plus or minus the square root of 25, so 5. Now is it plus or is it minus? Well, that was the whole reason why we drew the triangle in the correct quadrant, was to answer that question. And so we know here in this quadrant, the x's are positive. So we know this time it's the +5. Okay, we're almost done. So again, draw your triangle, find the sides. Last step is to answer the question that was given. So here, let's go back to this question. Well, we're finding the secant of the thing we call theta. We'll find the secant of that theta. Now how we find the secant, we know that's the reciprocal of the cosine. The cosine is the adjacent over the hypotenuse, the x over r. In this case, that'll be the 5/13. And so the secant is just flipping that. We would get that's 13/5. And so answering trigonometry questions, it's not that difficult. It just takes a few easy steps, okay? So always hang in there and know that math is everywhere.